Let's rank the best and worst subclasses for a barbarian. So there's 4 main criteria to think about. 1. Does it make their abilities that they're already good at better? 2. If it goes in a completely different route, is it actually good at doing that? 3. Is it fun to actually play with this subclass, whether you're doing it in battle or with role playing? And then 4, when we're going through all of the abilities, anything that comes early on in the subclass is going to be rated much more heavily than stuff later, because most campaigns don't make it to a very high level. So if there's something all the way at the end that's super awesome, it's not going to be as impactful to this rating. And I put out weekly D&D content, so if you like D&D related stuff, subscribe if that's your thing. Otherwise, let's go ahead and dive in, because as of right now, we have 9 different official barbarian subclasses. And we're going to start with the most common barbarian that I ever come across, the Totem Warrior. This is one of the original subclasses introduced in 5th edition for barbarians, and they even expanded it. The whole idea is that you take on spirits or ideas or concepts of certain animals. They added animals to this list, but frankly, nobody uses any animal other than bear 90% of the time. It makes you an incredibly good tank if you go with a bear totem barbarian, because most barbarians get resistance to basic types of damage. But a bear totem barbarian gets resistance to absolutely everything except for psychic, making you defensively one of the better tanks in D&D. But there are a few people that like to go more on the attack route, and if you go that route, I would recommend going with a wolf totem, but it is a solid subclass, and it does have some variations, so you have some customization here and there, but most people are just going to go bear, and you get that resistance very early on. The features you get at 6th level of barbarian are basically just non-existent. Nobody really cares about them because it might improve your carrying capacity or your ability to see really far or something, but most of the time those don't really come into play. 10th level gives you commune with nature, which nobody really cares about that either. And then at 14th level, which we're gonna rate a little less important, but it's still fairly impactful, you can charge through people with the totem attunement of the elk or knock them prone with the wolf attunement, but you can also stick with that totem of the bear, improving your tanking ability by making it so any creature within 5 feet of you automatically has disadvantage on any attacks against anybody other than you, really encouraging your enemies to attack you more than anybody else, making you a pretty solid tank. But overall, it's not a super fun subclass. It's just really good at making you very tanky, because most people are going to go bear. So I'm going to put it in a solid B for boring. Next up, I'm going to go with one of the other original subclasses for the 5th edition barbarian, and that's the Path of the Berserker. This one's pretty infamous at being garbage, because the very first feature you get is Frenzy. So when you're going into a rage, you can activate Frenzy, and then anytime during that rage, you can make an extra attack as a bonus action, but that frenzy comes at a very heavy cost, because you suffer 1 level of exhaustion when you're done with the rage, which is absolutely brutal, especially at level 3, because 1 level of exhaustion gives you disadvantage on all of your ability checks until you get a long rest. And if you wind up using this feature more than once per long rest, that means you have to do multiple long rests to get you back down to 0 levels of exhaustion, because multiple levels of exhaustion just gets more and more intense. 2 levels of it cuts your speed in half. 3 levels gives you disadvantage on all your attack rolls and your saving throws. 4 levels of it cuts your hit point maximum in half. 5 levels of it makes your speed flat out 0, and 6 levels of it straight up kills you. The other features of this subclass actually aren't that bad. The 6th level feature, Mindless Rage, makes it so you can't be charmed or frightened while you're raging. The 10th level feature allows you to intimidate people around you, and the 14th level feature gives you Retaliation, which is actually really good, but you have to wait all the way till 14th level to get it, because it allows you to use your reaction to attack anybody that's damaged you, making it so that this subclass automatically gives you 4 attacks while you're raging, as long as somebody else is hitting you, because you have 2 attacks as your action, 1 attack as your bonus action with Frenzy, and then 1 more attack as your reaction. But having Frenzy at level 3 is just so damn bad. I mean, suffering a level of exhaustion is brutal, and there's so many other ways to get a bonus action attack. You can dual wield weapons if you want to. You can take Great Weapon Master, which is especially good for barbarians because it allows you to hit with a really big weapon at a +10 to your damage. And if you crit or kill an enemy, you can automatically get another attack as a bonus action, making it far better than anything you would get from Frenzy. So overall, this is an absolutely garbage subclass just because of that 3rd level feature. So I'm going to knock this all the way down to F tier. Nobody should be using it unless you have a super high level campaign and you really want to make use of retaliation. But even with that, there's other ways to get a reaction attack. Now let's go from the path of the Berserker to the path of the Beast. This one is thematically one of the most fun and kind of what I wish the Totem Warrior was to begin with. You can find this subclass in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, but it allows you to bring out your inner beast. And I love the feel of this. It has great role playing, it is tons of fun, and it's just got some really good features. The very first feature you get at 3rd level is Form of the Beast. This allows you to choose every time that you rage what type of beast incarnation that you wind up manifesting onto your body. You can get some insanely vicious jaws with the bite ability, transforming your mouth into this muzzle that you just chomp down on your enemies. And if you're at less than half of your maximum hit points, when you bite somebody, you actually regain some health, which is a great way to constantly regenerate hit points. But I usually go with the Claws of the Beast. This transforms your hands into claws when you go into a rage instead. It deals slightly less damage than the bite because the bite dealt 1d8 damage plus your strength modifier, but these deal 1d6. However, when you're attacking with claws, you have 2 hands, and at default writes in that you get 1 additional attack as part of your attack action when you're using your claws. And this is especially impactful as a barbarian, because barbarians get a bonus while they're raging, starting out as a +2 to their damage, but it can go all the way up to a +4. And getting an extra attack in there is insanely strong because it really starts compounding that damage. And if you want to go a bit more defensive, you could choose to grow a tail instead. This is a spiny tail that you can whip people with, dealing a d8 of damage. And if somebody within 10 feet of you hits you with an attack roll, you can use your reaction to swipe that tail and roll a d8, adding that number rolled to your armor class, possibly blocking the hit altogether. At 6th level of this subclass, you get Bestial Soul, so you can actually choose one type of bestial aspect to incorporate into your build, and you can change this up every single long rest. You can gain a swimming speed and be able to breathe underwater. You can have a climbing speed, which is insanely powerful if you use it right, including climbing upside down on ceilings, which is especially cool because you can be like above your enemy and then swiping down at them while your allies are below, everybody just swarming one enemy simultaneously. Or you can boost up your jump distance, but that one's a little lame. Then at 10th level, you get Infectious Fury, causing you to infect the mind of whoever you're attacking. You can only use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, but it can force a creature to use its reaction to attack one of its own allies, or you can just deal some bonus psychic damage equal to 2d12, both of which are very cool and very fun. It's like you are essentially infecting them with rabies or something. And then the final 14th level feature is called Call of the Hunt, and this allows you to boost up all of your allies around you by like roaring out like an animal, and it gives them all temporary hit points and gives them bonus damage on their attacks, which is incredibly powerful because it does it to a number of allies equal to your constitution modifier. They can deal that bonus damage once on each of their turns, and that's a huge boost to your overall party's damage. Not to mention the temp HP is nice to help shield your allies and give them a little more tankiness. So I would take this overall subclass and totally give it an A. It's super fun to play. It has a ton of thematic abilities both in role-playing and in combat. Its mechanics are overall really good. It is a very high A. I'm so close to giving it an S, but I can't quite push it over that line yet. Next up, let's dive into Xanathar's Guide to Everything and grab the Storm Herald Barbarian. This one's kind of cool because it has some nice thematic ideas, especially when it comes to the role playing and the combat, but mechanically it's not that great. The first thing you get is Storm Aura, allowing you to choose one particular type of storm or environment. Like if you're choosing a desert aura, you're doing fire damage all around you, which might feel kind of cool, but the fire damage is kind of lame. It's only 2 damage and it hits everyone around you, including your allies. If you make it all the way to 20th level, it boosts up to 6 damage, which can be kind of cool, but that's still not that great, especially if you're going all the way to 20th level. And if you're only fighting one enemy at a time, that's even worse. I mean, granted, it's an aura of 10 feet around you, but 10 feet really isn't that much in combat. An alternative here is the Storm of the Sea, which does make it so you could do some lightning damage to one target, but this is actually equal to 1d6, and that can go up as you level up in Barbarian, hitting all the way up to 4d6 at level 20, and it still deals half damage even if they save on a dexterity saving throw. The last option is Tundra, so you can get some icy veins that gives you some temp HP. It's only 2 temp HP, but that also levels up to 6 temp HP when you activate it. This overall feature activates once when you activate your rage, and you can do it every bonus action during your rage. So getting temp HP every single round is kind of nice to have as just a shield of health. At 6th level, you get the feature Storm Soul, giving you resistance to certain types of damage. Following the same pattern, it's resistance to fire, lightning, or cold damage. At 10th level, you at least get to give resistance to some of your allies within that aura, but that's all the way at 10th level, because at early levels, every single point of health really matters. So the fact that you might be damaging your allies if they're too close to you is just so risky, but at least later you can give them that resistance. The high level features actually aren't too bad, because at 14th level you get Raging Storm, and if you go with the Desert Storm, when a creature attacks you, you can force them to make a dexterity saving throw as your reaction, and take up to half your Barbarian level as fire damage. The Sea Storm allows you to knock your enemies prone, and the Tundra Storm allows you to slow down your enemies all the way to a speed of 0. Overall, this is cool thematically, but mechanically it's not actually that great, so I gotta knock this one down to a mid-tier C. Next up, I want to grab the Path of the Wild Magic Barbarian. This also comes from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and I always wanted some barbarian that incorporated the idea of magic into their raging, because barbarians can't really use magic stuff that much. Right when you take this subclass, you get magic awareness, so you can kind of sense magic around you a bit, but you also get Wild Surge, and this is similar to the Sorcerer's Wild Magic Surge table, but there's only 8 choices here. So you get to roll a d8 and just see what happens. It's kind of fun as far as like the randomness of it, but each feature is actually kind of good. The very first effect is better than most of the Storm Herald Barbarian stuff, because it allows you to deal necrotic damage to everything around you and also gain temporary hit points at the same time. The second feature allows you to teleport all around the battlefield, which you can do over and over again as a bonus action. The third feature gives you a flump, which is kind of like a little pixie thing floating around, and you can use your bonus action to send it out and explode, dealing some damage at one of your enemies. And you can resummon that little pixie thing into existence and do it over and over again. Kind of like you have Navi from Legend of Zelda, and being actually more useful than it ever was in Ocarina of Time. The fourth option is that whatever weapon you're holding automatically becomes light, its damage type becomes force, which is one of the best damage types in D&D, and you can throw it and it automatically returns to your hand right away. The fifth option allows you to deal damage to anybody that hits you with an attack, and that happens no matter how many times. You don't have to spend your reaction for it, so it's constantly dealing damage to attackers. The sixth option basically turns you into a Super Saiyan, because you get surrounded by light, you get a +1 to your armor class, and any of your allies within 10 feet of you get the same bonus. The seventh option makes it so there's difficult terrain surrounding you, which only affects your enemies as plants and flowers start growing up from the ground. And then the eighth feature basically allows you to do Ki Blast as if you are a full-blown Super Saiyan like Broly from Dragon Ball Z, because you can shoot bolts of light out of your chest, making you a ranged barbarian, which is kind of just generally fun. At 6th level of this subclass, you get Bolstering Magic, so you can actually boost up yourself or an ally, allowing you to add a D3 to an ability check or an attack roll or you can use it to regain a spell slot of one of your allies. The 10th level feature allows you to re-roll that wild magic surge, and you can do so as a reaction anytime you take damage in combat. And this immediately activates the ability. So if there's something that activates only once, this is especially useful. And then finally, the 14th level feature is pretty minimal, which is kind of helpful for this rating system, but it basically gives you a bit more control over that wild magic. So now you can roll twice on that wild surge table and choose whichever option you like best. Overall, this is a super fun subclass. It allows you to have a bit more magical and randomness incorporated into your barbarian, and it's tons of fun. It's good for role playing. It has tons of options that have a chance of helping you on a front line as far as a tank. So while the mechanics aren't like insanely impressive, they are good in pretty much every other aspect. I would give this an A, but the randomness of it does kind of hurt as far as optimization goes a little bit if you are one of those optimizers. So I would give this a B, and a pretty high B at that. Next up, I gotta go with the Path of the Zealot Barbarian. This allows you to be a barbarian of the gods. And this actually is a pretty great barbarian. It does a little bit more damage just once per turn. With the first feature, you get Divine Fury, allowing you to add a 1d6 plus half your barbarian level as damage, and it can be either necrotic or radiant damage. If you wind up dying for any particular reason, somebody can use the spell Raise Dead on you without using any components, which makes it very cheap, and you can be a little more careless with your attacking or completely break a game by going ahead and being the human trap detector by just charging in and activating all the traps on yourself, and then people just get to keep resurrecting you. You have the feature Fanatical Focus, allowing you to re-roll a saving throw once per rage. You can have Zealous Presence, shouting out with the godly powers that you have in your possession, giving up to 10 of your allies advantage on their attack rolls and saving throws until the start of your next turn. And then the final feature is Rage Beyond Death, which is basically just going to make you unkillable. So if you're raging and you go to 0 hit points, you can basically just keep fighting as if you're not at 0 hit points. You still have to roll death saves like you usually would, but otherwise you can just keep going as long as that rage is going. And at high levels of barbarian, you can keep raging as long as you want, meaning that you can just be endlessly angry, but at the same time never dying. This is one of the most unkillable barbarians in D&D. So I gotta give this a super high A. In fact, I would give this an S, but there's one little thing that I think is better, and I want to save that for its own slot. So this is the highest level A I could give a barbarian. It is super good, both thematically and overall. You have tons of role-playing options with all of the gods in D&D, and you're just basically unkillable. Overall, mechanically and every possible category, it's just good. Next up, we got to talk about the Path of the Battlerager. This one, is not great. This was introduced in the Sword Coast Adventurers Guide, and it was mostly just for dwarves, but they opened it up to other races later. Everything about this subclass is just not great. So the whole idea is that you get a special kind of armor that is a spiked armor, which thematically seems kind of cool until you get into the mechanics of how this armor works, because it sucks. Spiked armor is medium armor that allows you to have 14 armor class plus your dexterity modifier up to a +2. Barbarians can still rage in medium armor, but there's better medium armor than this armor. So if you come across some solid half plate later, which would give you 15 plus that +2 in dexterity, you don't even get to use it, because then you don't get to use any of your subclass. And if you had a really solid unarmored defense, which barbarians get, allowing you to have an armor class equal to 10 plus your dexterity modifier plus your constitution modifier, you don't get to use that either. The whole idea of using this subclass is that you can use a bonus action to hit them with your spikes, and it only does a D4 of damage, and you can grapple enemies, dealing a whopping 3 damage to them. At 6th level, you can gain some temp HP. At 10th level, you can dash as a bonus action. And then at 14th level, you can do some damage against anybody that's attacking you within melee, but that's only 3 damage. Overall, the fact that this doesn't give you exhaustion almost makes it as bad as the Berserker Barbarian. It's such a bad subclass. I don't know why they made this. So I gotta put it in F tier. It's just complete and utter garbage. There's no way around it. But going beyond that, let's go back to something that's at least a little more fun with the Path of the Giant Barbarian. Right when you get this subclass, you can cast Druidcraft, which is kind of a weird thing to give, but you can also use Thaumaturgy, so you can roar out extra loud. You get the feature Giant's Havoc, so you can increase your size by 1, making you a large creature, and you can now add your rage damage bonus to any thrown weapons, which you couldn't do before. Most of your rage damage bonuses are only applied to melee attacks, so having a bit of a ranged barbarian is really fun. At 6th level, you get a little bit of bonus damage with Elemental Cleaver, allowing you to deal a bit more elemental damage once per turn, and if you are doing thrown attacks, that weapon immediately returns to your hand. At 10th level, you get Mighty Impel, allowing you to basically pick somebody up and throw them at somebody else, which is just tons of fun. And then at 14th level, you get Demiurgic Colossus, allowing you to increase your size from large to huge. And while this might get a bit cumbersome if you're dealing with an actual battle map, because that's a huge figure to deal with, overall it's a lot of fun to play as this character. And Demiurgic Colossus also boosts up your elemental damage from your Elemental Cleaver from 1d6 to 2d6. It is a seriously fun subclass, but the actual mechanics of it don't really boost you up as much as I would like. So it's fun thematically, it's fun for roleplay, but mechanically it's not that powerful. If it wasn't so much fun to play as this type of character, I would give it a C. But since it is a lot of fun, I'll give it at least a B. Then the last subclass we got to talk about is from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and it's the Path of the Ancestral Guardian. This is probably one of the best tanking barbarians in D&D. And I don't just mean tanking as far as taking a lot of damage for yourself. It's more about protecting your allies, which is one of the most important things that tanks really have to worry about, because the whole point of tanking in any sort of combat setting is to make sure your allies are protected. And the first feature you get is Ancestral Protectors. So the first creature you hit on a turn, they become the target of all of these spirits of your ancestors. And that target has disadvantage on attacking anybody other than you. And if they decide to defy that urge to attack you rather than anybody else, all of your allies have resistance to damage from that target. So that target is encouraged to attack you, and all of your allies have resistance to the damage, meaning they're taking half as much damage as normal. Then at 6th level, you get Spirit Shield. So any creature within 30 feet of you that gets hit by an attack, you can use your reaction to reduce the damage. When you get this feature, it's reduced by 2d6, and the amount of damage reduced actually levels up with your level in Barbarian. So at 10th level, it goes to 3d6, and at 14th level it goes to 4d6. And you can use this on every single reaction. There's no limit to it. At 10th level you get more of a thematic feel to the feature because you can cast Augury or Clairvoyance. Basically you're talking to the spirits and getting a bit more answers. And then at 14th level, while you're protecting your allies, you're also damaging your enemies, because if you use that Spirit Shield feature, now that same amount of damage you can block is also damaging your enemies, meaning that you have a pretty solid boost to your damage, even if it is much later in the build, but you're very, very good at protecting your allies, which is the best thing a barbarian can do. This is one of the most protective and best tank barbarians you can have. Thematically, they're all about saving their allies, making sure they're doing right by their ancestors and the spirits that are helping to guide them. There's tons of great role-playing possibilities. There's great mechanics for protecting your allies. Overall, this is an absolutely awesome barbarian, and this is the only barbarian that I would give an S tier to. While there's other ones that are basically unkillable and other ones that do other sorts of crazy stuff, this one really hones in on that tanking ability. So while it might not be quite as fun in some areas, if you do it right, it has so much role-playing capability. So it really earns that S tier. So that's all of my rankings. I will go ahead and make a build for every single type of barbarian and throw it up on my Patreon so people can have the character sheets for them. Even the really garbage ones, and I'll try and figure out some way to optimize it. Let me know your favorite type of barbarian, and if you would rank any of these subclasses differently than I did. If you like D&D related stuff, make sure to subscribe, because apparently it makes it so you roll more nat 20s in your D&D sessions, which I'm happy is actually working because I'm trying to send out those good vibes. But if you want character sheets for all of my builds, including all of the stuff I built here, but also any of my other actual character themed builds, I have all of them up on my Patreon, linked in the description down below, where you can be just as awesome as some of these people scrolling on by, or some of the especially awesome player character patrons: Christopher Sams, Dark of Skies, Barrows, Gruel, Zach, Felix Ulick, Dennis Bumgardner, Barrelisk, Natron 209, Kevin Shirley, Zephyros, That Funny Man 57, Joshua Maynard, CGC 2014, Lisa Martinez, Panda Milkshake, Ted Z, Andrew Nobles, Carcat Kitsune, Decker Joint, Z13, Viral Naravar, Daniel Galvin, and the Dino 21. Then going above and beyond that are my Dungeon Master level patrons I play D&D with: T Brownie, Julia B. De Oliveira, Just Wolf, Shane Gilroy, Daniel Saffler, Conman ZX, Cyberciety, Salvador, and Kilo Kilo. Then going above and beyond anything I ever expected is my God tier level patron, GameState. He helps me to an absolutely incredible degree, so a very special thank you to him. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, let me know by hitting that like button, and I'll be here helping you roll at least 3 nat 20s in your next D&D session, especially if you want to play as any barbarian, but especially that S tier one in Dungeons & Dragons.